everybody, welcome back. Today, getting back on the Boogie Shop Truck, tightening things up, making it better than ever. Like I mentioned in the last video, me and Miss Boogie are trying to move. Not only that, but our house is completely torn to shit right now. It's kind of changed my plans a little bit. Had a couple projects lined up that are going to get put on hold. That being said, there's still plenty of things to do on this truck, so let's get into it. In the video where I took this thing out of storage, I was horrified to find out some of the components under the hood had rusted over the winter. The header looks like absolute garbage. The alternator bracket hurts my eyes. And this coil bracket looks like hell. There's also a power steering pump down here. I'm not so worried about that because you can't even see the thing. I do want to make it through this season before I have to do any major work to it. Lastly, got some audio upgrades this thing desperately needs. For now, I want to make it run right and not embarrass me by blowing smoke everywhere. Alright, here we are in the truck. I'm going to start by taking the header off. The exhaust is held together with V-band clamps, so this is the first place we're going to start. These particular clamps use nylock fasteners, so you do not want to hit these things with an impact gun. Not that I would have ever tried that. Alright, with the bottom side undone, I just got to come in here, take the header off the motor. Time to take out this alternator bracket. Before I do that, I want to kind of go over what this setup really is. Down in here is where I built a custom shock bracket to keep as much steering as I could get out of this thing. When I did that, I inadvertently screwed myself for the stock alternator placement, which is right here. Combine that with the fact that I wanted to run a bigger GM style one-wire alternator, I had to get creative. This bracket is a small block Chevy alternator bracket that's really designed to sit on that side of the motor. It's from a company called ICT. What I did was I flipped it upside down and then built a steel bracket back here to hold this ICT bracket where I had room in the engine bay. One of the things I really like about this bracket is it's got a turnbuckle style adjuster down here. That's what you use to get belt tension. Never had any squealing issues or anything, so I'd say I'm pretty happy with that. So here's where it gets all tricky. Because the outlet for the water pump comes off the passenger side of the motor, I had to make a hole through this bracket for the lower radiator hose to come through. The tricky part about all this is I got to take this hose off, and I'm hoping it's not full of water. Feeling it, doesn't feel like it's got any water in it. So hopefully I can just take it off of this water neck and pull it off, get this bracket off, no problem. Also, in order to ground this, down here I welded a stud to the bracket and ran a 1/0 ground down to the frame. Cross your fingers. Well, there's water in it. Well, kids, let's just say that worked and move on with our lives. Now for the ground. I don't know why this is all wet, sticky, and smells like antifreeze. You saw I took that hose off and no water came out, just like I said it would. Weird. Old car problems, you know what I'm saying? Last thing to come off is mounted to the fender tub on the driver's side. That bracket holds the ignition coil and the power steering reservoir. I don't remember exactly what these wires do. I got a picture of them before I took them off. I'm going to go ahead and wrap them up with tape so they don't arc to anything and blow something up or start a fire. Alright. These things look like they've been in the bottom of the ocean for a while, so got to get them cleaned up before I paint them. Now, if you watch the videos on Wes's truck, where I finished up the air dam and the bumper, you should have seen a product that I use called OSPO. Still haven't done the research, but I still think it's phosphoric acid.
Is it though? Yes.
Anyway, stuff's a pretty serious chemical. Before we get using this, we give you a warning to wear gloves. I'm using these Venom steel gloves. I might have gotten them at Harbor Freight. Actually pretty sweet gloves. They're 4-ply, 6-ply, 5-ply, 10-ply, 70% thicker. Thicker than what? I don't know. Anyway, stuff's a fairly serious chemical, so you don't want to mess around with it. And it smells terrible. Make sure you're in a well-ventilated area. Put down a piece of steel over your bench before you start any of this. Hold on. Now that we're actually ready, I'm going to hit this stuff with a couple spritzes Scrub it with this steel wool. This stuff takes off surface rust pretty well. Well, after a couple minutes of scrubbing with that 4/0 steel wool and the OSFO, here's what we came up with. I hosed it down with some brake clean. This is the result. Not too bad. Now I just got to clean all the rest of those parts. Damn it. Alright, so let's talk about this header. Used to be a bunch of off-the-shelf headers for these trucks, and they all kind of disappeared. With my truck being bagged and body dropped, I wasn't even sure that a standard header would work. So almost from day one on this build, I was looking for headers. And searching some of the forums, specifically mightyram50.net, didn't really come up with much. And somewhere along the way, I ran across a video where some company was building unequal length headers for Miatas. That caught my interest. If you've ever heard an older Subaru like a WRX with a loud exhaust, got a real throbby, distinct tone to them. Regardless of what anybody tries to tell you, the reason for that is these older Subarus have an unequal length header. Reading up on the unequal length headers for these Miatas, I found out the trick to making the sound is to stagger cylinders number 1 and 2 compared to number 3 and 4. Now in a naturally aspirated engine, you really want an equal length header in order to get scavenging and all kinds of other things. Since this thing probably made 90 horsepower when it was new, I wasn't really worried about power. I figured if I had a free-flowing exhaust, it would sound like absolute crap. I thought it was going to sound like crap, might as well sound like distinctive crap. So I kind of sort of copied the design for my header. The trick being cylinders 1 and 2 are about 20 to 30% longer than cylinders 3 and 4. Since the firing order on pretty much every inline 4-cylinder is the same, it should work. The truck does have kind of a rumble to it. It sounds pretty cool, especially at idle. I figure it's better than the raspy, high-pitched tractor sound that this thing would make if I just put a straight exhaust on it. I have a buddy Joe from 515 Customs cut me a super thick flange laid out off of a brand new exhaust manifold gasket. I just took a bunch of bends, pie cut them up, and welded them together. The collector wasn't all that hard to find. I think I got that from Summit. Put a V-band on the end and put a little brace on it so I could bolt it to the transmission the way the stock exhaust was. I figured supporting it off the transmission would keep the exhaust from warping and potentially breaking you into the walls. Anyway, enough of that shit. Let's get some OSFO on this thing, get it cleaned up. I am not looking forward to this. Alright, rub this thing down with 4/0 steel wool, give it a little bit of Scotch-Brite, and then heavily douche this thing down with that OSFO. Before I was thinking it was phosphoric acid, it's actually phosphoric acid, whatever the hell that means. Basically what it is a rust converter. It takes heavy rust and turns it into this black stuff, which can be painted right over. You're supposed to let this stuff work for 30 minutes, and then clean it down with a solvent. I hit it with denatured alcohol. I'm calling this thing ready for paint. Well, it's another day. Remember earlier when I mentioned that the house was torn to shit? Things have gotten significantly worse.
She's gone from suck to blow.
We got a major plumbing issue, so now we're without a bathroom, a kitchen, or a basement. That means that the entire basement is now here in my garage, which is a bit of an issue for getting any progress done on this project. Rest assured, doing everything I can to make sure the truck is up and running so I can enjoy some shows. Right now I should have a Mustang-shaped object in here, getting subframe connectors and a Watts link. I had to push that off. I also had major audio upgrades slated for my truck, and that's also delayed. So the content's going to be rolling out a little slow for a while. Now if you want to help, there's several things you can do. First of all, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and leave comments. Now biggest thing, I've set up a site where you can donate money. Go to www.thisisallbullshit.com and forget what I just said about giving any money. Enough of that shit, let's get back on it. Now with all the parts painted back in the engine bay, I'm going to move on and address the next issue. And it's kind of a big one. After sitting for a while, this thing likes to smoke on startup. And for about the first mile or so of driving, it smokes like the Jamaican bobsled team.
Oh, thanks, Coach. That's what I'm here for.
The first thing, which is the easiest, which is what I hope it is valve guides. What would happen is, over time, oil would seep down through the valve guides into the cylinders, pool up a little bit, then when you start the vehicle, it'll smoke until the oil burns away, valve guides will swell up, seal, and the smoking goes away. I did notice that if I drive it pretty often, like every day or every other day for a week, it doesn't do that smoking anymore, so it's probably the valve guides. Number two would be pretty tragic. It could be piston rings. I think it had kind of low compression when I checked it after the build was really done. For now, I'm going to slap a band-aid on it, cross my fingers, and at least hope it won't embarrass me and start smoking at a show. Now the band-aid I'm going to slap on this thing is engine restore. Actually seen some pretty good results. Other people using this stuff online, both through YouTube videos and just general research. Talked to the engineering department. They said that they've personally used this stuff and it actually does work. 165,000 miles, blowing smoke, slapping a band-aid on it. What could go wrong? I'm gonna give it a shot, cross my fingers, punch this thing down the road. Alright, oil's drained. Had to reuse the filter because you can't find a filter for these things anymore. It's alright, I only had 1,000 miles on it anyway. Maybe a good time to point out that this is Boogie chassis, not Boogie, I'm a fucking mechanic. It's fine. Come on, Magic. Instructions say to shake this stuff up real well, which I've already done. And also you have to reduce the amount of oil you're putting in by the equivalent of this can. This turns out to be about 1/4 of a liter. Oh, somebody's trying to steal a Camry. Sponsorship. Hit me up. Alright, time for some oil. Going with a little bit thicker oil. I don't know. Like I mentioned, the instructions tell you to reduce the engine oil by 1/4 liter. By the way, I'm using liters just because the math works out easier. The instructions also say this is going to take several hours for this stuff to work its way through the system. So up until then, I don't expect any magic. I may check compression after a few hours of driving. Well, back up and running again. Over the next few hours, all the engine restores B vitamins, minerals, complex carbohydrates, fiber, and electrolytes.
It's got electrolytes.
Should get in there and start doing their job. So for now, let's take it for a drive. The underhood looks much better. Got the header coated with VHT flame-proof paint. Looks good now. We'll see how that holds up in the long run. I did follow the instructions very carefully on that stuff. You have to run it for 10 minutes, let it cool for 10, then run it again for 20, let it cool for 20 minutes. Then you're supposed to drive it for 30 minutes like normal and let it cool off. I also painted the alternator bracket and the coil bracket. So those look a hell of a lot better than they did before. All in all, I feel pretty good about lifting the hood at a show. Won't be so embarrassed. As far as the oil treatment goes, it still smokes a little bit. You're supposed to drive it for something like 8 hours for that stuff to take effect. After I get through that initial period, I'm going to do a compression check. That'll be the real test that this stuff's working. So we're not out of the woods yet. This truck's still fighting me. Driving along and I felt something hot and wet on my foot. To my surprise, I had antifreeze coming in through the firewall. I had one of the coolant lines capped, and that cap had split and was spraying all over the place. She's a squirter! So I slapped a new cap on it, good as new. The comedy I've had with license plate frames, having broken 2 of them, Wes, being the sweetheart that he is, realized he had one sitting in the basement and donated it to me. Unfortunately, it was already broken. So that's 3 license plate frames I've gone through on this truck. Speaking of Wes, I got to go over and help out getting that truck to the body shop where it's actually being painted as we speak. Wesley! How's it feel?
Good.
Good luck, we'll see you in jail. So we got that thing all slapped together, and Wes, Sheridan, and I snuck it over to the body shop where Sheridan works so he could paint it. I've seen some teaser shots and the thing looks great. I cannot wait to see it together. The color is insane and it's going to look like fire rolling down the road. You can go see that thing at Carlisle in the T building during Carlisle Truck this summer. I didn't get to the audio that I really hoped to. Next time.